I'll skip a meal if I really like a band. Like there's,
right.
Because I've learned the lesson the hard way. I've been at the pizza spot at This Is Hardcore when I hear that Desperate Measures is playing a surprise set before Let Down, and me and my girlfriend at the time are sad eating pizza, 15 blocks
Sad
away.
eating pizza.
Get your ass back here, boy!
You got your bevs all ready to go, it looks like, and so I think we're ready to kick it. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. I feel very honored today to be bringing on a Louisville legend, in my opinion, Tyler Short from Inclination, CONSTRAINT, and LDB Records. Thank you so much for coming on and joining me on the show today.
Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. I've started to not really do some self-narration, but kind of give a little bit of context and why, as far as, the reason I wanted to reach out to this guest and have them on my show specifically. So, just a few months ago, I got to see CONSTRAINT and a bunch of other, just get to hang out with you primarily at Promcore. And I think that was a long time coming, because I think for anyone who's been in the Scoped universe for a long time knows that I've talked about this before, that the top live set on our channel has been the Inclination. When you guys came up for Evan Shaw's memorial show, the only thing that's I guess interesting about that is that you weren't actually able to come up for that. So it was kind of a unique set where there was people filling in and doing guest vocals. And we got to talk about that a little bit at Promcore. And, I think it's cool to actually document and talk about some of those things here on the podcast. But I think getting to see what you're doing with the record label and Inclination and CONSTRAINT, and then actually getting to meet you in person and have it be so just genuine off the bat with you, I was like, it was a no-brainer to reach out and have you on the show, and I'm just very humbled that you're here talking with me today.
Dude, hanging out with you before the fest started that day and meeting you and talking to you was like a highlight for that weekend for me, just because it was such an awesome conversation. And I love, my favorite thing about going on tour is meeting new people and building new connections and friendships and whatnot. And that was one of pretty much everybody. I met a few people at Promcore. I met Flint from Life Force. He was a really cool dude to get to know that weekend. And I put out that 12-inch for Perfect World. And that was the first time I got to see them or really meet any of them in person since I put out the record. And it was really cool getting to meet a bunch of those guys and talking to them about fucking country music and shit. And it was just really cool finding all the things I had in common with these guys that I didn't know I had in common with them. And you were one of those, you're one of those people, I think, that it's a fast friends situation. Talking to you, I was like, oh damn, I could fucking hang out with this guy all the time. This is so easy. Nothing about this feels awkward. You just walked up and just introduced yourself to me, which I do. After seeing a band or that I really like, or somebody that I just like the way they mosh, I'll just walk up and be like, yo, my name's Tyler. Fucking I feel like we should know each other because we'll probably interact more than today. And that was a really special part of the weekend for me, was that conversation we had before the fest started. And then I proceeded to watch you do the thing that as a person who moshes for a lot of bands, I cannot fathom filming every fucking there's been festivals where I pitted for every band, whether it was for 2 or 3 songs or every single song of the set. The only time I went to a Breast Fest was one year Another Mistake played, and I moshed for every band from the beginning to the end. And I tried to do that at the first Midwest Blood Fest, the King LDB Fest, and I ended up in the hospital that night.
Fuck.
But yeah, so like as a person who like has I've done this thing, at least I did it all the way up until I didn't do it for the last LDB Fest, but I probably should have. But the one before the last one, I used to do this thing where I guess the one before the last one is the one I fucked my knee up at. So it was, I think even one before that, I would take all the bands that played the fest and I would take all the bands I moshed for and I would figure out my percentage.
Your percentage of how much you moshed during the set?
Yeah. Like how many,
I see. What
percentage of bands was I out there for, putting myself in danger and endangering others. It always really, like, my goal was always for like over 60%. And I was almost always like the 60 to 70% of moshers for everybody. And it's just, I don't know, it's just fun because you'll see like festivals are something I really, really love because it kind of like sort of puts a magnifying glass on the tribal nature of this thing that we all do. Where like, especially Promcore was one that like, you could really tell when Texas was in the building at Promcore. You could really tell when Tulsa fucked with a band. Like you'd see these different groups, you know, hit the pit together. And it's always really, really cool seeing that like tapestry or seeing that absolute domination of the scene. Yes. And I think that's super cool. And one of my favorite things about going out and just like moshing for as many fucking bands as I physically can is you'll realize, you'll be like, oh damn, like that kid I've been like moshing with all day must not like this band because they're not out here. And they've been out here all fucking day. And I know they just must not care about this band because I know how I care about hardcore, and I'll skip a meal if I really like a band. Like right. Because I've learned the lesson the hard way. I've been at the pizza spot at This Is Hardcore when I hear that Desperate Measures is playing a surprise set before Letdown, and me and my girlfriend at the time are sad eating pizza, 15 blocks away. Sad eating pizza. Like knowing that we're missing the only chance we'll ever probably get to see Desperate Measures songs played live. And yeah, so like I know that feeling of missing out, and I know that feeling of like, oh, I've seen Letdown a million times. Like I can fucking go without, like, I only like the 7 inches anyway. I didn't really care for the LP, which is a dumb thing to say because I came around to it. But at the same time, like, just the idea of missing out on something cool, like, even if it's something you've seen a million times, that's why, like, when I go to fests anymore, like, I rarely leave the fucking room. I rarely leave the building. I do not go out for food. I bring my food to the fest, and it takes a lot for me to actively leave. Like, I really have to not give a shit about a band to leave the building and fucking hang out or go get food or something while the festival's going on. Because there's just so much I want to see, because I still fucking love this shit, man.
Yeah. So I'm going to stop you there because you've given me so much to unpack. But I think, maybe the thing that I can, I guess, add to is that, like, again, like, clearly someone either from the outside or someone that knows you deeply, like, knows that your love of hardcore is true and pure, and for you to just do a riff for 10 minutes about just all these different aspects of hardcore is one of those things that showcases that. But I guess, like, one of the first things that I wanted to say is, like, yeah, like, I really appreciate the kind words about the conversation. And sometimes, like, this podcast is interesting for me because, like, I think sometimes with hardcore, it can be a very, like, check in, check out with, like, different relationships, and you're just, like, bouncing around from people to people. And as someone that, like, really needs that, like, one-on-one connection, I not only value this podcast to be able to do that and kind of further those relationships, and I felt like when we were chatting, there was such, like, a we chatted when you were setting up merch things, and then like just like random points throughout the day, I would be filming a band and you would come and like tap me on the shoulder, and then we would laugh at someone who would say something like funny during. And I'll shout out Matt when he was drumming, and he was like, shout out to water, and then it was like it's so crazy that we live in a world, and I think we both were starting to laugh because we thought it was gonna be like where we have oceans and bodies of water and lakes, but he was just talking about how all these people are coming together and just like doing hardcore things. So those are moments that I cherish for sure. And so there's that. It would, I feel like I would get called out if we didn't do the proper bev check of the episode before we just kept on riffing on hardcore. So it's tradition here for the guests to go first and showcase what they're drinking. So tell the folks at home what you got beverage wise.
It's the Kroger brand grape Pedialyte. We are currently out of all of the legit. I'm a kind of a brand guy. I don't really like getting the bootleg on things because I don't know. I think if I like something, I want like the real thing. I don't want the bootleg thing. But the bootleg grape is not bad. But currently, my Kroger is out of all Pedialyte because the supply chain is all fucked up right now. So
right,
totally.
Yeah. I can definitely feel that where it's, I don't know, it's anything from like the off-brand like cereal where it's like, oh, this is like Frosted Flakes. I was like, I'll just have Frosted Flakes. Like,
yeah,
I don't need to pay $1 less for something shittier.
I'm gonna eat one bowl of cereal a day. I want to eat Honey Bunches of Oats. Like,
right.
Like, I don't want to eat like the frumpy version of this. Like,
right.
I don't want to get skimped on the bunches of oats. And I know the fucking bootleg brand is going to short me on that shit.
Absolutely. As far as bevs for me, I checked a Liquid Death as well. You could probably see the mountain that's kind of behind me. I've already talked about that on other podcasts of how I acquire such an obtuse amount of canned water, but I also have a peach Red Bull as well to kind of balance it out.
So Liquid Death is just water.
Yes, it looks like an energy drink or a beer can, but it's just water.
Okay, because I saw that shit. So I'm very offline. Like when we message each other to set up this podcast, like that's me on my girlfriend's phone after I get home from work. Like I don't have Instagram or anything I don't have Instagram or any of the social medias, even on my iPod. So from the moment I leave my house, I'm completely disconnected from pretty much anything but email until I get home. So I had never heard of Liquid Death until I was at that Knocked Loose big show that they played here, where they had like the video playing and they dropped the banner and all the wild shit. What they did is like Gates to Hell, Nothing, and 200 Stab Wounds. I'd never even heard of Liquid Death, and I saw like the banner for it, and I saw like people like drinking it and stuff, and I was like, I even like saw some of my friends who were like straight edge drinking it, and I was like,
and you're like edge watch, like you put on.
I was like, I guess that's not what I thought it was. Because I just don't know. I don't know what's going on with so many things. Like so much of like me like keeping like cued into like what's going on in the zeitgeist is me listening to like podcasts, because that's something I can do at work. And I don't know, man. The Liquid Death thing really freaked me out because I was like, oh my God, I'm old, I'm shot. Holy shit. Like shit's just sneaking into like the fucking like the public space, and I am oblivious to it.
Right.
So
well, maybe after this podcast. So I actually had their VP of lifestyle marketing on the podcast kind of earlier in season 2. So as far as like understanding the lore and how the brand came together, like that's a good educational piece. But it is kind of like the premise is like we're just making the coolest looking product of water, and there's a why behind like the infinite recyclability of aluminum cans versus just plastic. So there's a lot of like good things there, plus like just it's cool, and it's like this is the coolest way to drink water, in my opinion. So
That's
it's kind
super
of yeah. But it is funny, like where you were saying like you've been Edge for how long, and you're just breaking over this can, and you're like, no, this is actually just water.
okay.
But like Endgame played a show in Toronto, and we had a bunch that came to us there, and the venue promoter was like, "How dare you bring beer into this?" I was like, "Dude, this is just water. Like, I'll like get like you could take like I have a bunch of cans." It's like, and he was just not having it. So I think that there is like kind of a weird thing where like, you know, because our brains are so used to just seeing something, and then that connects it to the why or the meaning to that. So this kind of breaks that a little bit.
That's amazing. That's really funny.
Yeah. Well, Tyler, I think there's a lot of things to touch on this podcast, so I want to be able to hit on as much as we can. Any new guests that I always have on the show, I always ask them to give a little bit of context about how they got into heavy music. And I know for someone like yourself, you've done like a many amount of podcasts. So I have a bunch of questions that I want to make sure that we hit on. So I'm going to make sure I'm going to limit your answer to only be 3 minutes.
Okay.
As far as your origin of hardcore, because I want to make sure that we hit on current stuff, but you know, gotta hit on the, you know, so give the Coles Notes version of that.
So how I got into heavy music, I'm a Tony Hawk's Pro Skater generation kid. So I heard all the bands on the first Tony Hawk, and that kind of opened my eyes to skateboarding and music and punk music. Even though I didn't really dive into punk music, I liked Green Day a lot already.
Sure.
I was a huge Green Day like fan when I was a little kid. They were probably one of the first bands that like I ever heard that like really hit my ear in like a different way. And then so once I got into skateboarding, skateboard videos, that's how I got into heavy music. I remember the first skate video that I was ever physically in. Minor Threat Filler was the opening song in it. So I went to Best Buy with a gift card and I bought the Minor Threat discography. I also bought Fugazi 13 songs because I'd seen a picture. I had a picture of Ed Templeton hanging on my wall when I was a kid. Because my walls used to be just covered in skateboard photos, like corner to corner. I even had them on my fucking ceiling. My whole fucking wall was just, my whole room was just papered in fucking skateboard photos. But I had this really central Ed Templeton photos, old from like the 90s, him doing a nose grind on this rail, and he had a Fugazi sticker on his board. So I just saw that. I didn't even know Ian MacKaye was in both bands until like years later. I didn't even notice they had the same voice because I was just like getting into these bands just blind. So I remember the first CDs I ever bought that were like punk or alternative were Fugazi 13 songs, Minor Threat discography, Bad Religion, How Could Hell Be Any Worse? Because the first skate video I ever bought, JT Alts skated to Drastic Actions, and God, just the amount of fucking bullshit that's filling up my brain. But yeah, that was like heavy why I started getting into that. But like, I didn't really have anybody showing me these things, and it took me till I was like 16 years old to start getting like dragged to punk shows and hardcore shows for me to realize that, oh shit, like I really like the Misfits. I really like, you know, Black Flag. And like I remember Jim Greco skates to Fix Me in the first in Misled Youth, the first Zero video I ever got. And the first band I was ever really in that played, we covered Fix Me. And like, so like I got a lot of chances for like full circle moments to like my intro to punk through skateboarding and through skate videos. And then once I realized that it was happening in my city and I could just go see it all the time, and these kids who were my age who were playing this music were also playing covers of all these bands that I'd been in love with for years. It was just snowball from there. And I became like, out of all that generation that I got into punk and Lil with, there's only like 4 of us left. And there used to be like 80 kids who'd go to every show. Sometimes you'd be at a show and like all 3 high schools would show up and you'd have 300 kids stage diving to Blink-182 covers.
Yeah. And then everyone's back in class the next day and everyone's almost talking about it versus like I'm sure, you know, myself included, sometimes you're like the only person from your high school going to these shows and you're like, I saw a Instagram story this morning from my friend Luke from First Day Out, and he was like, he was shared someone else's story, you know, as far as the time we're recording this, both Cruelty from Japan and Despise from Scotland are like touring the US, like, you know, going down to FYA, and it's like such a ridiculous thing where it's like you can just go to a random little venue, have bands from all over the world come and just like go crazy, and then you're like back at your job or back at, you know, your normal thing. So yeah, I think that's a great thing. And so I like the flip of that too, where it's like it's like everyone's almost bringing their different high school spirits into just the spirit of hardcore and doing that at a show.
But yeah, that's the short of me getting into punk, was just Tony Hawk.
You were pretty much 3 minutes right on the nose. So yeah. I felt the restraint that you were doing as far as doing that. But it's so clear that like if you had to boil it down to like one thing, it's skateboarding for sure. Yeah. So yeah, let's flash forward a little bit to more kind of current things. Maybe one of the things that we can hit on, and I mentioned it kind of at the top of the show, is like the top scoped live set on our channel is the Inclination one, and I think it's, you know, equally because it's like a well produced, you know, the sound is great, the video is great, but I think the why behind that video and just the uniqueness of it, like there's no other Inclination set on the internet that's like that one. But we talked a little bit at Promcore about that, and I was just kind of curious. Oh, what's going on? Okay, I think we're okay. Something jumped over on my screen, but I was kind of curious on like going through that process, because originally you were supposed to come and perform and all that. So I'm just kind of curious if you can pull the curtain back and tell any behind the scenes of that, and if you got a chance to actually like watch the video and kind of see how that came to be in your absence.
Well, first off, all cards on the table. I watch every Inclination live video that exists. I watch that shit like it's fucking game tape. Like I'm trying to figure out like, well, where was I moving enough? How do I sound? Like, do I sound bad because I'm moving so much or because I'm old and fat? Like where does this fall like in my performance? I don't give a shit about if Peter fucked up or Caleb's bass strap broke or something blew with someone's head, or, you know, Prosser, you know, didn't play this at the right tempo, or Chris played the new song too fast. I don't care about any of that stuff. The only thing I'm concerned with was, did I give my best? I got no control over everybody else's shit. I am the last person to be getting on anybody for their playing when I know how to play nothing. So I watch every Inclination video, even the one that I'm not part of, because I wanted to see like, yo, how did Anthony do? How did Evan, was one of the other guys, right?
Yeah, Evan McIsaac.
Yeah. See, these are people I don't know, but I vaguely know their. Well, I know Anthony. I love Anthony, but I vaguely know the other guys' names, because there's another one too, wasn't it?
Yeah, people? Cody DeWald, who does vocals in Serration.
Okay. Say I don't know either of those guys, but I wanted to see like, you know, like what did they say? How did they make this personal to them? Because I hope they did. I hope they found a way to make this unique. Because I for one, like, I think when it comes to Inclination live, I've maybe spoken on like a similar or same thing, never exactly worded the same way, like maybe 2 or 3 times. I've said a similar thing between sets. We don't play often enough for me to have a rehearsed like speech or explanation for songs.
Sure.
I usually just and give everybody a personal, like, to them experience. If I'm not feeling it too much, I won't say that much. If I am feeling it or I'm feeling something different, I'm going to talk on something different. So I wanted to make sure, like, was that represented? Did they care enough to be up there as much as I would have cared to be up there? And it was really, really nice, all the things that they had to say and the way they represented Inclination when I wasn't there. that being said, I mean that time is kind of a fucking whirlwind because I tore my ACL at LDB, and that show happened. Say that LDB is the first weekend of February,
and that was like maybe 2 or 3 weeks afterwards.
2 or 3 weeks afterwards. So I was still waiting on surgery at that point. I listened to one of your podcasts recently and I heard the dogs barking, and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome."
Yeah, I got the dog nanny cam, so I'm just watching them probably barking at my neighbor who's just going to work. So
at some point, one of my cats is gonna walk right in front of the screen and get all business stuff.
Yeah, anytime I'm listening to Jamie's podcast and you're like, "Oh, my fucking cat," and it always gets me. So we're in the same boat when it comes to those pet shenanigans. But as you were saying,
but yeah, so at that point, so when I tore my ACL, I couldn't really walk until like 4 days before my surgery. Like I was completely bedridden. So yeah, I mean, that was why I wasn't there. That was why I couldn't make it. They didn't nobody felt comfortable with me going up on crutches again and playing. And at the same time, they flew on I can't remember what Caleb used to describe it now. I think he said we're flying on the Family Dollar of airlines today. I think that was what it was. It was like Family Dollar. It wasn't Big Lots. It might have been Dollar General. He was like, we're flying like Dollar General Airlines today. Like they were like flying on planes that were like so small and like so shaky, and they were like running through the terminals to like make their flights because they were all late. So they were all like they weren't doing well. And he had texted me, I think, when they were getting on their final flight to Calgary. And he had said, he said it was such a good decision for you to not try to come. Because he said they would have missed flights. They would have missed flights.
Totally.
They would have had to carry me like fucking Peter would have had to like fucking put me over his shoulders like a goddamn fireman and like run my ass through the, and I don't weigh enough for him. Like I weigh too much for him to do that shit. He'd probably fuck his back up and we'd both be playing in chairs. But yeah, so it was, for the best that I didn't go. That's been still my first and only opportunity to play out of the country. Because Inclination was looking at Europe, COVID. CONSTRAINT was looking at, a lot of shit, probably making it up to Canada. We might make it up this year. I don't know exactly what's going on. I find out that are happening CONSTRAINT like maybe 3 months out. Like I don't really concern myself with things that are 6 months away until they're like 3 months away. Then I have to worry about telling my work what's going on. But yeah, so that's still, I mean, then my girlfriend found my passport recently because since I got it for that Canada show and then didn't have to use it, I lost track of that fucking thing. I haven't needed it. So it still makes me pretty sad that I didn't get to play it because that's been that was my first chance of playing out of country, and my band had to do it without me.
Yeah.
But
I think
it was still a cool video.
Yeah. And I think I really like the, it wasn't just, like Evan McIsaac, who was, I think probably did, I think close to like 50% of like the songs of the set, and then Anthony and Cody were kind of filling, 25 here, 25% here.
Yeah.
But like he came on. He was actually the last in-person podcast that we did kind of before COVID hit. It was like we booked it the day of, and then it was like everything shut down the next day. But when we were talking about it, he was just talking about just the care, and it wasn't just like, oh, we're just I think Calgary hardcore specifically is kind of known for just like making shit happen regardless. And I think the extra mile going for saying things for such a special show and set, I think really a pleasure of mine to be able to capture that, and also Jordan, who's on the podcast call, like him and I kind of like really shot that show intently to kind of make sure it was kind of preserved forever. But yeah, it's a bummer to have that as like the potential thing to bring you out of just playing shows in the US. But I think it will be that much sweeter once that actually happens, where you're able to play Canada for the first time, or Europe. So yeah, I hope that comes sooner than later.
Yeah, I do like, this is something I kind of meant to talk to Anthony about, but with Inclination, I feel like I make it a little bit easier because I don't write as much. I used like notoriously long-winded when it comes to writing lyrics. And another mistake in particular, my band before Inclination, I would just really fuck myself over with like writing way too much for songs. And I've talked to like a bunch of my friends who are like actual kind of musicians who do vocals in bands, and they have like commented sometimes on like the weird arrangements that I'll do with vocals and lyrics, because I'm not a musician and I'm just doing my thing with what music I'm given. Like like I had people text me when the Constraint demo came out. Other people I know who do vocals in bands, they were like, man, your vocal patterns are really odd. They're really odd vocal patterns, because I'll like play with vocal tempos a lot because it doesn't fucking matter to me. I just listen to what the drums are doing, and I try to, you know, play around in the space that they're going. And then if I can find different parts of guitar where I can like either speed things up or like through like, you know, like alliteration and stuff, like hit certain points on certain points
Right.
in the riff, I'll try to like weave myself in and out of the guitar if I can. And because I mean, dude, like I just want to like, I've always got like way too much to say. And one of the things I kind of purposely did with Inclination was like whittle it down to like, well, what do I need to say? Like what parts can I like let breathe? Because I am curious, like I feel like especially with these new Inclination songs that on this new record, I wrote sort of more like I used to write. I didn't take as much consideration for the fact that I'm gonna have to play some of these songs live. And in recording them, I was like, well, fuck, like me and Isaac would have moments where you'd be like, man, yeah, I guess you got to have vocals over that part too. If you're going to have vocals over this part, it doesn't sound right having this part be blank. I'm like, because I kept saying like, am I doing too much? Am I doing too much? And he's like, no, I think you got to do this, but fuck. I was like, yeah, I know it's going to suck to do live. Like this is going to be really fucking hard. And like, I'm going to end up having to talk a lot of things. And it sucks because I like want to be like, I want to have like a powerful like voice and whatnot. And I watching that Canada set, I was like, damn, I was like, they're doing a really fucking good job. And then in the back of my mind, I'm like, I wonder how fucked up they would have been doing any other band I've ever been in. Like, I wonder, like, 'cause this is kind of the easy one to do.
Right.
Like, this is the one that I made. This is the one I purposely made easy because I wanted to give myself, like, I was purposely trying to write less. And then I've kind of fallen back into some old habits where I've just got too much to say and I'm filling the songs up more than I meant to when the band started. But then I see fucking Knocked Loose sometimes, and I see Brian go a full fucking song, and it doesn't seem like he stops once, and I'm just pissed off. But he's like younger than me, so he'll feel it in a few years. He'll be fucked.
Yeah. I do think that like you know, it's funny that you just a few moments ago were like, well, I'm not a musician, I'm just doing my thing. But like, to me, being a musician is about like seeing where your where your creative boundaries are, and then pushing that and expanding that a little bit more. So, you know, whether that's like things you were doing in the past, but you know, I'm sure it's maybe doing something old but with a new, you know, mindset or spirit to it. So I think that's sick, because I always like to be able to do that with the guitar writing that I'm doing or any songwriting stuff. And I I think it's ironic that like some people are like, oh, your vocal patterns are off, or not off, but odd. Like maybe not common, but I think, you know, some of my favorite bands don't have the most cookie cutter vocal patterns, because it's like maybe a little bit more rhythmic and matching with like the actual downbeat of the drums. So yeah, I think it's I'm really excited, and you know, Isaac and a bunch of people have alluded to a new Inclination record. So to kind of have a combo of like older Tyler writing style and maybe the stuff that was off the latest EP, I think that should be very exciting. Based off of, you know, you saying saying you have a lot to say, I guess like there was a couple things that, you know, watching the Constraint set, obviously filming that at Promcore, and then some of the other ones that I watch on a regular basis. I think that you have said things that I'm like, that's really, really good. And I just want to kind of go like a little bit deeper on that. So like specifically something that I heard you say during the Constraint set that like resonated with me was like putting your money where your mouth is in hardcore. And maybe before like I just ask you a question off of that, maybe you can just create a little bit of context about what that means to you. And then, you know, we can kind of dig deeper into that.
Well, I think I was talking about in regards to like the record label and doing that. And I mean, for anybody, I mean, it's a zine. It's what you're doing right now. It's what you do at other shows. It's like just becoming engaged, becoming involved, giving yourself like skin in the game for like the way your scene's going, even if it's just like, you know, going out to a show that you normally wouldn't have gone to a flyer to try to help a show that you do actually care about. Like, just like it's a community, it's global, and it connects all of us. And in a way, like I don't like the idea of like, I love Turnstile on Seth Meyers. Because I loved watching Quicksand. I loved watching the YouTube clip of Quicksand play the Jon Stewart show. That is why I love Turnstile on Seth Meyers. I love watching our music become mainstreamed in a way, but I do worry that it takes away the counterculture aspect that punk and hardcore should have, which I think, because you talk about me saying things that resonate, I'm apparently saying a lot of things that don't resonate too. Like there's a lot of times I say things critical of pharmaceuticals, I say things critical of capital, and there are a lot of people watching these videos online, and I will fucking be honest, because I've fallen into the hole of YouTube comments. And it is a brain disease that I have now, in which I cannot, when I see that there's a bunch, click it and then watch myself get burned at the stake. but every time I start seeing these things, I wonder, I'm like curious, I'm like, who are these people and how did they find this? And what the fuck are they doing here? Like, if you, like, I was talking about this in the break room the other day with one of my coworkers, because I've been listening to like lots of podcasts about like the far right and in different like fascist groups. Oh my god, I don't know if you could hear that, but the cats are hunting each other right now. They are
hunting. I wasn't sure. I was like, is someone moving a box? But it sounds like
no, that is them jumping off of shit and like running over and chasing each other. But yeah, so I've been listening to a lot of these, like a lot of podcasts talking about like different like far right groups and extremist groups, and like how they relate to the ones that came to be in like the 30s and whatnot, and like the different, like the way we're in the 2020s, a century later, we are on our way to new fascist takeovers on a global scale. Okay. And at the same time that I'm listening to like this shit spotlighting that, I also listen to all these like hard, leftist media things that are all, almost playing the same games that these social democrats played in Weimar Germany, where you are almost willing to, like, I get it, like taking on the let's go Brandon thing as a joke, like, is funny. It is funny. I hated it, and I've now come around to thinking let's go Brandon is objectively a funny thing. It is funny. But it seems like I'm seeing a lot of people like on the far left now starting to seem like you are you'd be willing to compromise with the objectives of these far right people, because they also want the system to break and tear down. Like, I want the system to break and tear down, but I want all the workers to take up responsibility for it and build something together without the capitalists. But if I were to work with people who say don't think women should have rights, or who also don't think that, people from China should be allowed in this country, if I somehow resulted in those people coming to power and not my political leanings, my idea for, a productive society, then a lot of my friends could end up subjugated or killed in the streets.
Sure. Yeah.
So like, I think like the gravity of understanding this shit is very important. And like, I see like, because I not only have I fallen into the rabbit hole of YouTube comments on my own band, anytime I see a band that's also saying some pretty radical things, I'll watch them. Like I'll dig into their comments too. Like I dug into Move's comments recently, and I saw tons of shit bashing that Corey dude. And I look at it and I'm like, how the fuck are these people even finding this? Like I get it that like Hate 56 goes on such a wide, it gets to such a wide audience because it like promotes itself because of how many views it gets. It gets, added and suggested to so many people who maybe otherwise wouldn't have found it. But the fucking logo is a hammer and sickle, essentially. Like,
yeah, totally.
You're surprised you're finding radical thought here, and it's really annoying to me, because to bring it back to what I was talking to my buddy at work about, we were shooting the shit about everything. And I'm like, man, like everybody, like people try to act like they try to say that they're not racist. That's fine, but everybody should be anti-racist. Mm-hmm. It's not just being not racist. It's about being anti-racist, and through that, you've got to be anti-fascist, and then through that, you have to be anti-capitalist. There is no way to be one without logically following it through to the other one, because you have to look at, so I'm anti-racist. Who are the racists? What did they think? Oh, they tend to lean very fascist. So now I have to be anti-fascist. What do the fascists think? I've got to move on to anti-capitalist. It's all about like figuring out like what are the talking points I'm using, and what are the far right people saying? And if these things are lining up at all, I need to shift. I need to move. I can't be falling down this hole. I can't be standing lockstep with people who are goose stepping. Like there is just no fucking way that's okay. So yeah, I'm trying to think of how we got onto this line.
Yeah, maybe to bring us back around and to maybe kind of not broaden it, but like I think it's clear that the education piece with a lot of the why behind what you're saying it versus like, oh, like we're just saying this thing because that's like kind of the general political leaning of hardcore is important. But I think it's also the lesson of like actually saying something, because most people, including myself, got into hardcore because they went to a show and a vocalist said something about how we treat people, how we treat marginalized groups of people, how we try to take things and better our society outside of hardcore, and just all the like those messages are the thing that have resonated with a lot of people and have cemented their activity in being in hardcore, or their interest at the very least. but I think it is that thing where it's like, as soon as you're actually saying something on like a consistent basis and you're known for the person to actually like say something meaningful at a show, you become an easy target when there's multiple sets being documented of you and people online. And I think you're right, is that questioning of like, how is this person finding a move set? Like maybe maybe it's an organic thing because they subscribe to Sonny because he filmed in Harm's Way video and then it became a meme and blah blah blah. But like, it is very strange on how a lot of people will say a lot of things in response to what maybe you say in a set, but it's not a direct conversation, right? It's like you say something and leave that on a sign, and then that person leaves a sign and it becomes a part of a conversation, which is actually not. It's just people leaving remarks at certain time periods.
Well, on that topic of you saw somebody say something, it made you feel a way, so you have to defend this thing that is so abstract to your life. Truly, I think when someone says something and it makes me feel like a way, but it's like not directed at me, it's just like a thing in the world and it's making me feel a way, my first move is to wonder like, well, why do I feel this way?
Sure.
Like, why do I feel attacked right now? That's something I need to work out. And I think like, especially in the past few years with like all the protest movement that happened, like a lot of fucking white people have had to feel very uncomfortable. I've very uncomfortable for like attitudes I've had that I didn't necessarily clock as racism. Like there's for a specific example, when things were getting really hot in Louisville, there was gunfire exchanged at a restaurant near a gas station way down in the west end of Louisville, and this man David McAtee got shot by the National Guard, and when they reported on it, he had a weapon and he had fired it, or someone had fired from where he was, and he had a weapon on him. And my first fucking thought was, well, why did he have a gun? And then my second thought is, because it was his restaurant and it's his right.
Sure. Yeah.
But my first thought was, man, if he didn't have a gun, but in what context has not having a gun not saved a ton of young men in this country? Like, but I still had that feeling, and I'm like, that's something I got to check. That's something I got to be aware of. I got to be aware of that instinct I had to, because of the way the news has portrayed crime and poverty my entire fucking life. I have to be aware of the biases that are ingrained in my brain, and I have to try to fucking root those things out. But I do remember what the way we started this was the money where your mouth is thing, and then I got on to the what you do and all that shit. But honestly, though, the money where my mouth is, the way I always break this down when people ask me like, why did you start your record label? I always say, well, my band broke up, and that was where I spent 40% of my income. So I now had 40% of my income at my disposal, and rather than save it and do something productive with it, I'd rather burn it and throw it away. So I started putting out records. And that's, I think, like, that's something that, like, when LDB started, I was starting to finally get paid a living wage after, like, the whole time. Another Mistake was a band the whole time. Sons of Southern Darkness was a band, essentially, like all the bands that I was doing before Inclination, pretty much. Those, I was living on starvation wages. I was relying on having 5 to 6 roommates. Like, I was relying on my partner's, cooperation to exist. Like I was relying on, I had to rely on the safety net of my friend group in order to get by. Like I didn't lean on my parents very much. Like I can remember there was one time I asked my mom for money, and it was because we were leaving. Because I used to be a no, not surprising that I'm a flip phone guy now. I used to be a no debit card, no bank account guy too. And
you were like cash only, like
cash
just the
only,
biggest.
baby. Dude, I was cash only. I was cash only when Inclination started.
Wow. Oh, okay. This is recent. Okay.
Yeah, I have only at age 30 became a bank account guy. But so I was cash only for so long, and since I was always living check to check, we were leaving for This Is Hardcore on a Wednesday night. I get my checks on Thursday. I wouldn't get paid until I got home. I asked my mom, "Hey mom, can I borrow $250 to go to Philadelphia?" Because I want to be able to buy merch. And when I got home from Philadelphia, me and her went to the movies. I paid her $250 back. I paid for a movie. We had a good time, and I paid her back the next week. I've always tried to be very, very like independently not a burden on the people in my life. Part of the reason I'm straight edge too. But yeah, so like the idea of me, living check to check for so long, and then still somehow managing to spend all this money to like bail out another mistake on merch debts, pay for, gas out of my own pocket, do the things that, you got to do to be in a band that isn't successful. Once that band was over and I no longer had 40% of my income going to the garbage, I had it, first I just,
and it was something that you could, it was something I was like, oh, I have this chunk of change, and now doing this is actually more of an investment than just like making it happen and just like kind of throwing it to the wind. So
it was also like, once I had money, it was like, you could only buy so many quicksand shirts before you feel like you need to do something more productive with your money.
Sure.
And once I bought 2 quicksand shirts, I was like, you know what? I probably shouldn't be spending like, close to $100 on a bunch of t-shirts. I should probably take this money and do something more worthwhile to it. So I put out that Wicked Garden 7-inch. And then from there, it just became this whole, arms race of, well, I want to have more stuff coming out now that we've got one thing, and then I just kept on just acquiring different projects, and it's a nightmare.
Yeah. It was very funny rolling up to see you at Promcore, and then just the amount of bins. But a well-oiled machine, in my opinion. Like it sounded like everything was like laid out. I was like, okay, here's the t-shirts, here's all the records. And going back to the original quote of like putting your money where your mouth is in hardcore. I think that is like a thing that I have thought a lot about with what I do with Scoped and some of those things, because there have been those moments where it's like, like I want to go film this fest. They don't have a budget to, fly me out. I'm just going to go and do that myself because I believe in documenting and doing these things. So I guess like a question that I had when it comes to that, because I think a lot of people do there's like kind of like 4 brackets. There's people that don't put their money behind their actions. So it's almost like money and time. So there's people that don't spend the time or the money in hardcore. There's people that spend the time with going to shows and different things, but they might not like be avidly buying records and picking up a shirt, even if they don't like the design and things like that. There's people that maybe spend a lot of money, but maybe they're not going and being a part of different things. And then there's the people kind of in the far bottom right quadrant, like you and I, who are like going to a lot of things and investing a lot of time and years ultimately, and a lot of money. So I'm just kind of curious on like, what do you think is more valuable for someone who's like, they want to be involved in hardcore, but like it's either maybe a financial burden and maybe it can't be like dishing out hundreds and hundreds of dollars, but maybe there's a time element that they can kind of bring to the table, because that's for me, I think something that I've thought about is like, well, maybe I can't be flying around the world to every single hardcore festival, but at the very least, I can take time out of my week and, you know, something that I've done for years and years and years to reach out to people for the podcast, to reach out to people to do this and that. So I'm just kind of curious on like, I think both are valuable, but I'm kind of curious on what your thoughts on what is more valuable.
So, I mean, the most important thing I think anybody can do besides time and money or anything is have fucking fun. Have fun with this. That's what it's for. This is what this is supposed to be for. It's supposed to be, this is a community thing. We are supposed to be enjoying our community. If you're not enjoying it, then kind of try to look for something to reignite that flame, or at most, don't try to spoil anybody else's enjoyment of something. Like if you're not feeling it, at least don't try to damp somebody else's time. Like, to me, that's the biggest contribution anybody can make, is the encouragement of everybody with what they're doing. Even if you can't give your time, or you can't give your money, or you can give one or the other, it means a lot to me when I anytime somebody puts in an order for LDB, I write a little note on the back of every single sticker I send out to, thank them for it. When I start seeing the same names every time we drop a new record or we put up new merch or something, I recognize the names. I recognize the cities I'm sending these things to. And I, write to these kids and I say, thank you so much for, continuing to do this. When I start catching on that somebody's buying like 6-7 records in an order, but they didn't get one color of one of the records, I just throw that color in, because obviously they care about having every copy of something. And it's $4 or $5 on my end. And they, I already made that off of the rest of their order. So there's lots of things you can do that contribute to this. And I think the main thing you can do is care and have fun. Mm-hmm. And if you can't give money, but you're like an older guy, maybe just talk to the younger kids. Maybe just, tell them about your experience with hardcore. And the thing I think that like a lot of us need to be a little bit aware of is just being like honest with how we feel in the moment when we're out at these shows. Like, when I don't do small talk, really. I'll be honest with you. You ask me how things are doing, I'll say terrible. It's awful. I'm alive this year. It sucks, but I'm here right now, and that's cool. And just, just try to disarm each other and disarm yourself, and be more open to the connections that we can all make at these shows. Because someone like you, a complete stranger, can walk up to me. I have that moment when you introduce yourself to me, or when you started talking to me, I'm like, fuck, is this a guy I've already met before? And then you let me know. You're like, I'm so excited to film the thing in Calgary. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Because now I can make a connection. And now I can let myself off the hook that I might have forgotten the person I'd met before, which I'll even be honest with people. Sometimes if they come out and they start talking to me, I'll be like, yo, man, where we met, where we talked, mm-hmm. Put me back, tell me, because I've had a lot of concussions. And at the same time, I'm just meeting so many people. There's so much in my brain going into my brain on a daily basis. So much unnecessary shit that somehow stays around, that I'll forget names of people that I legitimately like and care about. So I think just being honest with each other, being engaged, just be engaged with it. If being engaged is buying records, that's awesome. Post the pictures of your records online. Show people the shit you're getting. Talk to people about what your favorite thing is. Have conversations in real life. Have conversations online. Just connect. And that's the most important thing you can do. One of the ways I connect with people, I send them fucking records all the time. I get up on a stage and I am completely honest about everything that I feel. Like these are my ways of connecting with people, and I connect with people by literally hitting them sometimes. Like,
you connected that way.
yeah, I connect that way. So like it's just it's all about that, and it's all about like caring about the people you're connecting with. And even if you are beating the living fucking shit out of each other sometimes, like just caring about that connection and making sure everybody's okay and everybody's surviving. And say you're sorry sometimes. Like, like I've fucking the first there's a band from here, a new band, Two Witnesses. They played their first show. During that show, I obliterated my friend Y, and then while Naraya, her boyfriend, was checking on her, I fucking kicked him in the head. And I felt so bad and I felt so sorry, but at the same time, Y has literally knocked me out before. And Naraya has kicked me in the nuts. So like this all this shit comes around. So it's but I don't know, and I think that's just like I truly like I care about all the kids in our scene. I care about all the kids at an Inclination show. I care about all the kids at a Constraint show. Even when they leave that show, I think all of our lives should be better than they are right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, I think it's like there's no point in doing money or time related things in hardcore if you actually don't like it. But I think having the, going to a show and being able to like use that as the fuel that kind of does that. And, not even a show, like after I do like a hardcore podcast that I think goes like so well and we talk about so many great points, like that kind of like fills my cup when it comes to all the things that are being involved there. So it's kind of like know how to, know where you're spending your hardcore coins and how you're actually like gaining your and not actual financial coins, but just like emotional and just passion,
dude.
If you want to call it.
Like shows make me like shows and podcasts and like and even just like practice sometimes. Like I'm fucking buzzing after that shit, man. I am fucking like I'm just jazzed over this shit.
Yeah.
Like my girlfriend Ashton can like attest to it. Like there's been so many times after a show in Louisville where we'll be driving home and she'll be driving or I'll be driving and I'll look at her and be like, man, they all came again. Everybody came out. I can't believe it. Like it's awesome. Right. It's so cool. Like it's just it fucking makes my day. It just makes me so happy. And even when the kids don't come out, and even the 15 or 20 kids who do come, it's like, well, everybody didn't come tonight, but everybody here, I know their name, and we're gonna have fun. We're gonna make the best of it. So it's big or little, it's all fucking worth it.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned friend of the show, Naraya. He's come on twice now, and there's specifically it was when Transgression was playing Stone Flurry Fest back in 2019, and Naraya is moshing, and then he just like gets like connected, just like straight into the head, and just like like it just like it's just like saw him like go down like a Mario character, and then like it was one of those things where I just kind of panned and didn't really expect anything to be happening, and then just like, oh shit. And so yeah, like I think anyone little like finish him kind of moment. But no, I think that's so crucial to be able to do that. And I think the more that your cup gets filled in hardcore and you kind of get to that place where you're just like your passion is at an all-time, I think that's when the spillover happens and you're like, I want to start a zine, I want to like film bands or take photos, and then it just becomes like an ongoing thing where it's like I don't know how to like it is a thing where like people build stuff up and then life can change and then it's like hard to maintain, but like for me, like doing this podcast or filming bands or doing anything scope related is like a huge momentous like purpose driven why in my life. And I feel like without it, it's like, okay, I would have so much time back, but like I actually don't know what I would be doing with that, because I would just be thinking about reaching out to different people. Like the minute any new release comes out, a band has like a viral moment, I'm like, I want to talk to this person about it, not in a like a twitch the evil mustache of like getting the views or anything, but like genuinely like What were you
Unpack
thinking
it.
when
Yeah.
X was happening? For sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, no,
Yeah.
I think like using the analogy of like it filling up your cup to the point where it spills over, and then you start to fill up other people's cups. Like that's such a good way to put it. And I think, yeah, no, that's I've never heard it put that way, but that's very it's very nice.
On the money. On the hardcore coin money. You know, you were kind of mentioning like feeling that buzz of energy, and it was very funny when I was filming Constraint, and anytime you guys would finish a song and you saw like some kid doing some move, you would like kind of like single them out and be like, that was sick. So it's kind of like how Scott Vogel, I joke at times like he's powered by like people stage diving. I think you're just powered by like young kids moshing. So I'm kind of curious if there's ever.
Dude, Vogel is an intentional influence on my live energy. Like that is
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense.
Like because I did a bunch of bands when I was younger, and I didn't really know my voice yet. I didn't really know what my personality was on stage. Like I was in the first few bands I was in didn't even know what they were really doing. Like it was haphazard music, no real direction for what it was trying to be. And then I landed in a band that was already kind of a touring act because their singer had left. And it was like a darker, like more on that like kind of cursed, like heavy rise and fall, like that kind of and then kind of verged more in like a chaotic sort of like Breathe or Resist kind of sound too. But it didn't really that wasn't what I was like raised up on. That wasn't like I loved Rise and Fall, but they were like a mainstream hardcore band at that point in time. And but then when the band was called Rattletooth, when Rattletooth started to like kind of bridge out into this thing, and it was always like darker themes and stuff. So I didn't really like open up in the band very much. I stayed kind of closed. But I like dressed crazy. I dressed real crazy back then. I don't know what I was thinking. I wore small t-shirts. They were way too small for me. Like I would like bleach my hair all the time. I'd always like beat the shit out of myself with the microphone, be bleeding all over the place. I really didn't know like what I was doing physically yet, let alone like emotionally with the band like performance. And when Another Mistake started, like one of my like goals was like, okay, well, this is a band that sounds like Right Brigade, Count Me Out, American Nightmare, but I'm gonna play in this band like I'm fucking Scott Vogel. Like I'm going to move the whole fucking time. I am just gonna be all energy the whole fucking time. And then that has just kind of followed me through into every band I've done ever since, where I just like gotta keep the fucking pace, gotta keep it going, keep it moving. Like it's funny because I'll find myself the only time I'm standing still sometimes is when I'm not singing.
Right.
Like I'll take a beat sometimes, but then the second I've got the mic back up, I'm moving again, which is
it's instinctual.
It's very counterproductive to sounding good.
Usually you would move around and then stop and do the vocals, but it's the opposite for you.
It's the opposite for me. Once the mic comes up, my feet start moving every time. But yeah, no, I mean, like the Scott Vogel thing is like if that is at all in your head, then that is a mission accomplished for me, because he is the fucking king. He is the king of the live performance. Like I don't care what anybody says, you know, any fucking like any new band, no one's got Vogel energy like Vogel has. Like
yeah,
he is just an inspiring individual to get you to just have a good fucking time. And I think it's almost like counterproductive to me, the songs that the lyrics that I write in a lot of ways, inclination aside, because I think I do try to write some sort of uplifting, like things in Inclination, but during Constraint, pretty much everything I write is like, oh, I want everybody to feel bad about everything because I feel really bad about everything. I want everybody to feel bad about everything. But I would love for people to have a good time while I'm talking about how we should all feel bad about everything. But yeah, I don't know. That's definitely like I just, that's my fucking favorite thing. Like, I'll never understand people who want to be in bands and don't want to play live, because all I want to do is play live. I hate recording. I kind of coming around to it as an adult, but I would almost always just rather like play and get that connection.
Yeah. I like when you were talking about like, I always like my body instinctually moves when I'm like doing vocals. I'm just like, do you just have a super long XLR cable and you're just in the studio just doing takes, and it was like
So,
just you thinking about standing still seems so foreign.
I've always had to do the screen and the mic behind it and the, you know, screaming up into it thing. And then when we recorded the Inclination record with Andy at Bricktop, he gave me a mic.
Oh, okay. So you could actually, interesting.
And I got to like stand how it was comfortable, and I would like, you know, like jump when I was like in there, and I would get like jazzed up while we were recording, and fucking awesome, man. Like, highly recommend. It's, if I can do that any other project I'm a part of, like I'm trying to do that, because that shit rocked.
Totally. Yeah. No. Yeah, very cool for him to give you that option and you be able to work that out. But I guess like the original thing that I was kind of thinking about was just the you know, sometimes I forget being in hardcore for as long as I have is like the not like honeymoon moments of like when you're first getting into it, but everything feels like anything bad is almost sick and you're just like stoked on it. So like even if you get like hit in the face and your nose gets broken, you're bleeding all over, like that could be like the highlight of your year as you're getting into hardcore. And if you've been in it for 10 years, maybe you're like, oh, this shit sucks. And you know, because you have to take time off, or you know, you ruined your favorite, you know, band shirt that you've owned for, you know, 5 years or whatever it is. But I do think that it is super cool for you to like, you know, some kid does like a cartwheel during your set, and then he was like, "You did a cartwheel, that was sick." And I think that like
one-armed cartwheel. There's a
one-armed cartwheel. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw him do it earlier in the day. And I was like, that was the sickest fucking thing I've seen all weekend. And then he did it right in front of me during Constraint. And you don't know how much that meant to me. That meant so much to me, because literally the kid, it was the drummer from Moral Law. Literally, like, he had done my favorite move of the weekend. And then he did it during my band too. And I was like, I feel fucking honored. I got that.
Yeah.
No shots at Cayman. He did a legitimate backflip, but
yeah.
But the one-arm cartwheel, like, that was fucking, because that kid didn't look like he had that kind of shit in him, is the thing.
Yeah. Like
he did not look like he was a one-arm cartwheel guy, but there he was doing it. It was awesome.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about, and I think for those people that have maybe the more leaner and lankier body types, it's like all that we have are our limbs. So the cartwheels, either with 2 or 1 hands, is kind of our go-to thing. So
I can't do a cartwheel
at all.
At all.
Oh,
my body tries to flip. Like I go, and then I can't keep my legs straight to come through. My knees inevitably bend, and I just like fold over, and I like land like essentially on my feet and my ass every time. Yeah, I think part of why I can't do a cartwheel is I never learned how to do it when I was a kid. But
okay.
But doing that motion that I do when I try a cartwheel, that's how I stage dive.
Okay.
So my body inevitably flips like that because it wants me to land on my back on people. Because
but you can just go outside and just do a regular cartwheel and be like, all right, it's like you like it's such a muscle memory thing. It sounds like
my body is since I never did cartwheels when I was little, my muscle memory does not know how to do a cartwheel. So when I try to do that move, my muscle memory does know how to do a stage dive, so it just makes me do a stage dive.
So
and What can you do?
2022 to-do list for Tyler is to learn how to do a proper cartwheel.
I did learn how to do handstands, so maybe I can do a cartwheel now, but I don't know. I haven't tried since I learned how to.
You need one of like the little like the pads that they use for all the stunt devils in or stunt doubles in movies where you're just like just trying to
dude,
do it.
Dude, I wanna go to one of those fucking trampoline parks soon. I didn't know they had like
that's
ninja,
what you need.
I didn't know they had Ninja Warrior courses now. I heard him talking about an axe to grind, and now I'm like, fuck, like I've been staying away from trampoline parks because I've been like, damn, can my knee really handle just like jumping on a fucking trampoline for hours? Like, is that really the move for me? But if I can like do some fucking like, if I can climb some shit, then I'm fine with going to a fucking trampoline park. I'll just climb shit all day. I don't need to fucking trampoline.
So Tyler, I'm gonna kind of segue a little bit here into to some more straight edge discussions because obviously Inclination's a big one, and I remember when Isaac came on many podcast episodes ago, we had alluded to some of the things with Inclination as far as like being self-aware of the style of straight edge lyrics that you do, and I thought like being a fan of you guys, I was like, to me, this feels like very like clear-cut, attainable things. And I do think that there is like some things where I don't understand where someone's like, trying to critique something that is maybe like more, I don't even know what the word is, but I think like, do you have any thoughts on that of like, you were talking a little bit earlier about like patterns being odd, but like, what's your take when people give you feedback if it's like, oh, that line's a little cheesy or like things like that? Like, I'm a big fan, but I'm curious on what your thoughts are.
So, I mean, I don't really know, man. I don't think my lines are cheesy. I definitely think certain songs, like there are songs that I've written in Inclination, really just like two in particular that I don't look back on very fondly, because I don't have as much of a connection to them. They're both on the last EP, and it's not anybody's fault. It just ended up being 5 songs, and I only thought it was going to be 3.
Oh,
so
okay.
When we wrote that EP, I had the lyrics to When Fear Turns to Confidence. I knew that was what I wanted the record to be called. I had written the lyrics to Vagrant, and I'd written the lyrics to Uninhibited before any of the music was even written. I had all those lyrics already written. I ended up changing I changed Fear around a little bit. I added a verse in Fear because Isaac wanted something over another part, and I just kind of came up with something in the studio that worked. Vagrant, I had to play around with a little bit, and the lyrics for Uninhibited are actually the exact order that I wrote them without hearing music, and I used every single word that I had written. Like that whole song was already written in the order that it was recorded before the music even existed for it.
Yeah.
And I still stand by those 3 songs a lot. Me and Peter wrote Into the Shadows together. And I think because it was more about something that was personal for him, it feels less personal to me.
Sure.
When we first recorded it, I thought it was badass. I thought I did a cool job with like arranging vocals and lyrics and like that gasp in the song. I thought that was cool. Then we played the song live one time, and it was still like early after the record came out, and like it didn't really get like a reaction. And anybody who does vocals in any band can tell you that it's fine if your song doesn't get a reaction. When the song's 4 minutes long, it isn't fine. Like it's fine to play, like Constraint can play a song and get no reaction, and even while it's getting no reaction, I'm like, well, this is going to be over soon. When that song's not getting a reaction, so we played it twice. We played it 2 days in a row on that Midwest tour we did after the record came out, and I told him, I was like, I don't want to play this song the rest of this tour. I'm fine with bringing it back into the set at some point if you guys want to, after the record's been around again. like a little bit longer, I'm fine to like put it back and give it another try. But I don't like it right now.
We field
And
tested it, and it's not working at this point in time.
And we never. Sorry, I just wanted to check to make sure I had enough battery to get through this whole thing. And we never played. We've never played Inclination, the song Inclination. We've never played that before, other than playing the breakdown to it at the end of sets. And that was a song that, if somebody really wanted to go in and say, like, you know, Inclination's cheesy or corny or whatever, I can argue that the song Inclination might be a little bit of that cheesy, corny. It was, I had a really good line. I had that last lyric is a very good line. If you think that's cheesy or corny, you're full of shit. That is a hard lyric. That is sick.
I agree.
I love that line. The rest of the song, though, could be, you know, can be written off as I was on the spot, I needed to write another song, and I did.
Sure.
And that has kind of turned me off of ever wanting to ever record another song like that again, where I am on the spot, I need to write another song, and I do. I kind of never want to do that. I only ever want to write a song if I'm feeling inspired to. Because I think I kind of forced that one. For the first EP, though, I stand by all those lyrics. I think they're all amazing. I think they're all fantastic. I think they're to the point. They're very open. They're very honest. They're very easy to understand. They're very direct. No exit. Never gonna sell out. In with the new. I think that if more kids don't start being straight edge, there's not going to be any straight edge kids soon. In X of my own, I think that if you want to sell out, and you should. I don't think anybody who doesn't want to be straight edge should be straight edge. I think that the only people who should be straight edge are the people who care about being straight edge and aren't fucking boring. Because I think if you are a boring fucking prick and you're straight edge, all you do is deter new kids from finding it, which, as I said, and with the new, I think more young kids need to be straight edge. That's it. I think it is a very, very healthy lifestyle for your relationships. And I think it is certainly a healthy lifestyle for avoiding peer pressure and conformity and learning how to think for yourself. I'm not saying anybody should think how I think. I think they should just think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I've, talked about Inclination on many different podcasts because, had a ton of straight edge homies on the show and that's come up to varying degrees. But I think something that I accredit a great current straight edge band is like, if I'm listening to the lyrics and I'm like feeling the conviction and it's almost like the ideas of straight edge are like resonating like with me through the music, that to me makes a good straight edge song or a band. And like, to give you a little bit of context, and I've mentioned this before, like I didn't really do anything drug or alcohol related until I was 22. And even after that point, like I haven't done drugs, and my alcohol consumption is at like the very the lowest of levels, because for me growing up it was that like peer pressure of like everyone's drinking, everyone's doing this, and like having a my mom coming from a family with alcoholism and abuse. It was like that's something I want to stray away from. But as I like formed into a more mature and sound adult, it was like, okay, I'm checking. It was like I'm checking this out because I never like really claimed straight edge, but I was like, I'm kind of doing this, and now it's just something that's like super, super casual. And I remember, this is tying a lot of dots here. Like Evan McIsaac, who did a lot of the vocals for the Inclination set, we talked about that, and he was, mentioning, there's a lot of people, because in the past, a lot of punk and hardcore was like it was very black and white when it came to that. It was either you get fucked up all the time or you were straight edge. And now there's a little bit of gray area in between where there's someone who's, maybe only have a glass of wine at dinner, but that's kind of it for them. So I think it's very, like, to me, and you don't have to necessarily agree with this, or, maybe you have some thoughts. Like, to me, I think that there are things that you can look at straight edge and respect and value and not like implement, but, I think if there's straight edge and getting fucked up all the time, I'm leaning more on the straight edge sides without actually being straight edge, if that makes sense.
No, I know, I feel you. And like my views on my views on alcohol, drugs have shifted extremely since Inclination started. Even like
Sure.
Inclination started at a time when a lot of my friends were falling into heroin. Like, I had a lot of friends, and I never thought that was really going to happen. I had a bunch of my friends go through cocaine phases, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the way it made them. I didn't like the way they acted when they were in the throes of cocaine phases. I thought it made them very untrustworthy and very annoying. But when when Inclination started, like, part of the reasons, like, culture corruption is like, I wrote that, is like, I legitimately was just like watching tons of my friends die in essentially secret, like, because that's something you can't really, like, you've got to hide that from your friends, because the people who care about you will, try to shake you out of it, try to help you, pull you out of it. But with addiction wants to, it's a disease and it wants to survive. It's a parasite. It is something that will kill you. And it will destroy your life. It wants to destroy your life because it wants to destroy your safety net. It wants to destroy everybody in your life who cares about you. So what it will do is it will cause you to put everyone off. And that's why it really hurts me too when, like, some people, like, I've said like, fuck this person, blah, 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 whatever. I'm not saying fuck this person because they're a drug addict. I'm not saying fuck this person because they're, I'm saying fuck this person because they got some of my friends hooked on drugs.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Like, they were the avenue for destroying people's lives. And I believe there's a difference between using drugs and being addicted to drugs. And some people
Absolutely.
use drugs without becoming addicted to drugs. Unfortunately, certain people who use drugs can influence people to become addicted to drugs. And it is important to understand that not every person who uses drugs is a drug addict. Meaning, you can't let everyone who uses drugs off the hook for their actions. They still have to be accountable for the effect they have on other people's lives.
Right.
And that is why I wrote that song, because I was sick of watching my friends die. Like, dude, I remember when Tim Butcher from Minus passed away. Nobody fucking knew he was using drugs like that. And it was awful. It was crushing. It was crushing to lose somebody so out of the blue who was going through something all alone because their addiction could not let anyone in because it wanted to survive. It wants to survive at the expense of its host. And it just sucks. It really fucking sucks. And, like, it really sucks when people say, like, oh, Inclination's corny or Inclination's fucking, like, I, like, legitimately everything I've ever written about is something I really, really care about. Even said 2 songs that I said I could argue against that. Literally, Inclination was a concept for a song I wrote about how just this feels natural to me. Just being drug-free just feels natural to me. And the song I helped Peter out with was a song about him falling out with a person who he was close with because they both just reached that point in the road when one of them went one way and the other one went the other way. And I cared about that song because I care about Peter and how Peter feels. And I wanted to help him convey that. So even the songs that I don't feel as much of a personal connection to, I still all agree with what I wrote about for all of them. Even though I do believe in harm reduction. I do believe in being there for people who are addicted to drugs. I just think that you have to look at the line between support and enabling.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, no,
and at the end of the day, you got to put your oxygen mask on before you put your friends on.
Yeah.
You've got to take care of yourself before you try to take care of anyone else. Like, it's one of the I listened to like a really long like breakdown of the uprisings that happened during the Black Lives Matter protests, and one of the things they talked about was the amount of people who would rush into tear gas to help people and become victims of tear gas and need help. And it's like,
mm-hmm.
you have to help people without hurting yourself, because then you're going to need help.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's really frustrating. It's really fucking messy. Drugs are messy. Alcohol is messy. If using drugs and alcohol is harming your life, I don't agree with it. If it is enhancing your life, fucking go for it. I just don't think I need it, and I don't want it.
Sure. Yeah. I think that wraps that up like perfectly, because it is such an individual thing. Like, it's like some people do need that for like medical reasons, because they were dealt a shitty hand, and there are some people that I think just being, and it's something that I'm not being straight edge myself, it is something that I like to talk about, it of like forwarding the message that like it's that t-shirt, like, it's okay not to drink, but it's like kind of the flip side where it's like, it's okay to drink if you have self-awareness and the handle of it, and that's not like affecting others. Because it's the same way where it's like, I'll go to a hardcore fest, and it's like very late in the day, and like people have had their like parking lot beers or things like that, and it's like, I actually can't have a genuine conversation with you because you are X beers to the wind. And so you might not even remember this interaction. So I actually prefer, some of those things. So it's a very convoluted and messy thing, as drugs and alcohol are. But I think I like how you said it there, where it's like, if that is in some way enhancing your life, whether it's like a mental illness thing or anything that's kind of helping balance some things in your brain, like, go for it. But it doesn't need to apply for the masses, like straight edge should be for the masses as well.
Yeah, no. And there's like a lot of like I got fucking accused of being fucking anti-vax because I said I try to avoid pharmaceuticals at all costs. And it's like, bro, like so I'm talking about this with my coworkers. One of Teresa, she's a older Black woman who works in produce. Me and her talking back by the Baylor the other day. She's talking about her daughter's not wanting to get the vaccine, and I'm like, man, I was like, that's so frustrating because I can't fucking argue with that. Like, she's younger than you, and she might know a little bit more than even about how statistically a lot of drug treatments were guinea pigged on the Black community, and that is probably making her feel a little hesitant to just get this thing that's experimental. But the only thing I can say is, tell her like, hey, like, if rich white people are getting it, it's probably good to get. Like, use that. I'm fucking fully like the thing that sucks is in America, almost everything is racial. It's always racial. I guess in Canada it is too. Like, in a lot of ways too. Everything can be broken down to race, and it's not a bad thing, because you can use that sometimes to convince certain people to make better choices for their lives via looking at what people who have always been on top are doing and letting them know, hey, if they're doing this thing, it's probably fine to do. Don't take everything they say for their word, because at the end, these people still only exist at the top because you're at the bottom, and they have kept you there. So, take that into consideration, do the right thing for you. But yeah, so like I get accused of being an anti-vax for being critical of pharmaceuticals, which is, again, still just me being critical of fucking capital, dude. Like, I don't believe any health need someone should profit off of that shit. People should just exist, and it shouldn't be a crime to exist. It shouldn't be you shouldn't have a barrier, like a financial barrier, to continue to be healthy. And a lot of things, like, I mean, I've gotten into this with my therapist a little bit, talking to him about, like, man, like, I'm curious too how much mental disabilities or mental conditions that a lot of people have is a result of living in a absolute commoditized economy. Like, everything's a commodity. Your labor is a commodity. We've commodified our social interactions for likes and retweets. Like, we've created a commodified system for almost everything in our life, and we're like we were talking about with our coin, our hardcore capital that we use too. We've commodified all of our existence. This is not a natural thing for us to do. We're supposed to be communal. We're supposed to take care of each other. How much of anxiety is induced because of economic anxiety? How much of your social anxiety is because every single waking moment of your day, you are closer to being homeless than you are to being a millionaire? Like, it has got to be, like, because so many, there's always the argument of, like, well, like conservatives use the thing, like, they're using like, the liberals are turning everybody gay. It's like, no, everybody's just been gay. Just now people are being more comfortable being out and being gay. Right. When it comes to mental issues, I don't think people had this much anxiety before they had this much concern for the way things are. I don't think in fucking feudal fucking Japan, even in fucking, in a serf society, people were as anxious all the time as we are now.
Right.
Because they knew and they understood the contract, the social contract they were in, even if it was fucked up, even if it was exploited.
Sure. Yeah.
Even if they were essentially serfs, they understood the social contract. The social contract is so blurred. You can create a fucking Bitcoin and fucking swindle a bunch of people out of money and become and lift yourself into the upper echelon by financially ruining a bunch of suckers. Like, there is still economic mobility, but it's always at the expense of others. And that's got to fuck you up too. To know that the only way for you to do better is to step on somebody and put them down and crush them. That is so fucked up. And that has got to be harming our brains at this point. And at this point, we are into the range where our parents have been in this, and their parents have been in this, and their parents have been in this. So now it is a generational defect in our heads where we have just been on this thirst, on this hunger, track for so long, on this paper chase, that it's just poisoned our whole fucking society, man.
Right.
It's just so gross. And it's like, so you talk about me not liking pharmaceuticals. I don't like that anybody has to feel bad for anything in their life. Right. I'm pro everyone being more healthy mentally. And I would rather root out the causes of this and free people from the things that are making them feel so shitty and so bad about themselves and so awful and so uncertain all the time, rather than give them a pill to put them in a docile state where they can go to work, they can pay their bills, they can pay their insurance, they can pay their fucking, they can pay for gas. They can do all these things that society needs them to do to keep existing, because I don't think our society is benefiting us anymore. We benefit society more than society benefits us at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think saying, I don't think we should all have to be on drugs to exist is the wrong take when you follow it to I don't think the things that are making you feel this way should exist to make you have to take a drug in order to go to work. Maybe you should be able to not go to work all the time. Maybe you should be able to call into work because you don't feel good.
Right.
Maybe when it's too much, that can be enough and that can be okay. And we can tell people it's okay that that's not enough. And you can stay home today.
Right.
And you can take care of yourself. But I'm anti-vax apparently.
I think it's I think people are quick to pull something out of context and use that as the absolute, thing. But that's the big thing with this podcast that I firmly believe in is like, you have to be like completely out to lunch, because I think the long form discussion format is the thing that kind of showcases like who's thought things through and who is actually faking it or things like that. So clearly, like, you're someone that continually educates themselves on a lot of things. And, I think it's always better to say something than not say anything at all in fear of someone, quote unquote, canceling you or saying something on the internet. And I think it's like, we're going deeper and deeper into a culture that like there's that fear of that, and I think that's silencing people. And like Jordan and I have chatted about it in length, where it's like, out of anyone on the Scope team, I might be the first person to get like crucified online because I've put myself out there as much as I have through this podcast. So whenever that day comes, we'll have to see. But you'll be the first person that I let know, like, hey, it happened. Tyler, this has been a really, really fun chat. It's about the time that we can start to wrap up the show. And one of the final segments that I get to ask all the guests that come on is a favorite Mosh related story that they would like to share. So that's anything that's first to your mind. That could be you connecting with someone connecting with you, Inclination, Constraint, or even just a random Louisville show. Whatever's first to your mind is how we start to end the show.
So I listened to your last night just to try to understand like how this shit's structured or whatever. I listened to your conversation with Austin and last night while I was at work. And
from Orthodox?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Shout out to all the upside down guitar players.
Dude, I felt good hearing him talk about that, because I realized that I've never done that to him before, because I don't realize it's weird. It was one of those times for me knowing nothing. Like, I've gotten to always go through our friendship without putting him on the spot that he apparently needs to be on, which made me feel good. But yeah, I thought about it for a second, and I was like, what's a good mosh story? Because like when you mosh as much as I do, like I already told a mosh story this podcast about me.
Yeah.
Fucking two of my friends back to back without even knowing I did it. But a really funny one that especially because it kind of made me. It came up earlier, that Breast Fest that I went to, the one that Another Mistake played. I'm trying to think. I think it was during Discourse that it happened, but it could have been. It had to have been Discourse, because I remember it was just like Spin Kick City. So the way I fucked up my knee was doing like aerial spin kicks, because when you do an aerial spin kick, you always land back on one leg. And I had been doing them for several years, and I fucked up my knee doing it up in Milwaukee. But this was the time when I was still like fucking like that weekend too. I just did a front flip off the stage during Will to Die and landed on my feet.
Okay.
I figured out at that point that I could just do a flip. No one had to catch me, and I could just land flat on my feet. But during Discourse, I was doing a spin kick, and I was like, I did one, I did another, And then I like went up, and while I was up, I could see a kid, and I knew I was going to come down on this kid because I didn't know he was there when I had jumped, but he was going to be where I landed. And I like caught him in the side of the head with my foot and just took him out. Just fully just took him out cold. So he hits the ground. I immediately, as soon as he hits the ground, I put my arms up underneath of his armpits and I start like dragging him through the room. And I like just barreled into the people and like just like push people apart. And I'm like holding this kid. He's completely out cold. And I like walked over to a couch up against the wall, and there's all these kids sitting on the couch. And I looked at them, and I'm holding a kid who's limp in my arms. And I looked at them, and they looked at me, and I went, "What the fuck off the couch? Like, get up! Like, this kid's dead." So I like dropped him on the couch, and I sat there with him for a second, and he came to, and he's, okay or whatever. How many fingers am I holding up? You seeing okay? You good? Sorry, you good? I went back and I kept moshing. Immediately, I get blasted in the mouth, and my tooth goes through my lip.
Like out?
Immediately, I go back into the pit and just get busted in the mouth. My tooth goes through my lip. So I've now got a hole in my lip. I'm bleeding from both sides of my mouth. I'm bleeding down my face
God.
and into my, and so I was like, fuck, I guess I gotta chill now. And I think like Take Offense was playing next, and I like got some ice, and I was like holding ice up to my mouth because I knew it was gonna fucking balloon up. While I was watching Take Offense, I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna keep moshing. So I just kept moshing. And I think it was like Take Offense, Cro-Mags. And if you watch the videos, there's a video of Cro-Mags, I think, on the internet. You can kind of see me stage diving a little bit. And I've literally got a bag of ice in my mouth. Like I would just like dip it like it was like tobacco. I would like put the ice in my mouth, and I kept going back to the bar with this emptying my bag out and getting more ice because it was so hot and so sweaty in that venue that my ice would almost melt immediately. And as I was leaving the venue that night, I like had the ice sticking out of my mouth, and I walked past the kid I knocked out, and I was like, "Yo!" And like we had a really funny moment where we were both laughing. I was like, "Yo, I got it, karma."
I got what was coming to me. Don't you worry.
Now my lip is pierced. Luckily it closed up quick. It was very funny.
I just love the visual of you just packing the ice in and just like chewing it like anyone, like you like just riffing on the straight edge for so long, and then telling the mosh story where it's like you were doing the same practice as like chewing tobacco but just with the ice. That's just comedy gold. So Tyler, again, I really appreciate all the time that you've given me. I feel like I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but I want to be sensitive
with your
time.
I can go on forever. You've seen how long I've been Amy for.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, this is Tyler talking about Spider-Man for 3 hours. All right, sign me up. But all of the LDB and your band links and your links and all that will be in the YouTube description and the show notes. But if there's anything that you want to send the people off with, people you want to shout out or plug, the floor is yours.
Man, I think I've said so many things that I think everybody like. I feel like I've said enough things to close out already. Just do what you want to do and have fun, and try not to have fun at the expense of others.
I love that. But dude, it's been great chatting with you, great hanging out, and I can't wait until we get to link up again soon this year. I think that there's a couple moments where that's a huge potential, but thank you again for coming on the podcast today.
Fuck yeah, man. Thanks for having me.